Increasingly, words like, democracy and freedom, when used to fuel these campaigns, seem, if not euphemistic, downright dishonest. And when we think of the last sort of 50 years and American psyop and deep state operations backed by perhaps special forces or outright military action in Central America, South America, and in particular in the Middle East, so there are obviously examples in Africa as well, it seems that this ability to impose hegemony was facilitated by the fact that the projects were being imposed upon regions, peoples, and in particular, I suppose, military forces that were easy, relatively speaking, to subjugate. And perhaps the information sphere wasn't so recalcitrant and immediate in its ability to offer counter narratives and immediate reporting, even though there's plenty of information available on what the CIA was doing in Nicaragua or Venezuela, even, and certainly Somalia, Syria, the list goes on. And what struck me as outright absurd was that the kind of mentality that had been somewhat deployed in Afghanistan or Vietnam or wherever you want to say, it was being imposed on a country like Russia that has its own history, that has its own sovereignty. I'm not suggesting those countries don't, but Russia is a military superpower and a nuclear superpower, and in spite of whatever weakening took place with the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Soviet Empire, they remain a significant nation. And the playbook didn't make sense to even a layperson like me. And now we're starting to see that an individual's intuitive response is closer to an accurate appraisal than the oddly newly framed bombast and jingoism that you find coming out of the neoliberal Biden administration that uses similar tropes and terms and says that if you are interested in bringing about diplomacy and peace, that you are an apologist. So how is it, from a military perspective, that it seems, because I've got so many questions for you, like I wonder when the American appetite for this kind of expansionism expired. I wonder when manifest destiny was no longer appealing. I wonder when nation-first movements, like seems to be happening across Europe and certainly in your country, took a true hold, and what isolationism means and how much it's connected to the end of the sort of American manifest destiny project. But I suppose to start us off, I wonder, Colonel, why it was assumed, and can it have been assumed, that a playbook that would work in those countries to the south of your nation or the Middle Eastern countries would in any way be effective in a country like Russia?
Well, if you embark upon policies or policy directions without any strategic analysis, I suppose everything is possible. Remember that the people that you're dealing with in Washington today, in sharp contrast to the people that founded the country and governed us for most of our history, at least up until World War I, these people are ideologues. Ideology is a secular variant of religion. So you're dealing with people who are fanatics who absolutely fervently believe that they have captured a monopoly on truth. They're very similar to the crazed Bolsheviks of 1918, 1919, 1920, who believed that they had the answer. And of course, their answer, collectivization, nationalization of everything, state ownership of everything, produced tens of millions of dead inside the Soviet Union long before World War II broke out. Well, we're dealing with people that have the same attitude. You cannot have a useful discussion or debate with them because their position is from the very beginning that one size fits all. They have the answer. Liberal democracy, in their terms, has to exist everywhere, and when it does, there will be peace. In reality, the answer that George Washington and Hamilton and Madison and all the people that framed the Constitution and founded the country believed in was something very different. Their attitude was, the best thing we can do is to stay out of other people's affairs. And if we are successful and we build ourselves up financially, economically, defend our country certainly, but build ourselves up and we become prosperous and successful, then others will want to emulate us. In other words, we're not interested in exporting what we do and how we live to anyone at gunpoint. That's a waste of time. It doesn't work. And then we went through World War II, and we occupied Japan, we occupied Germany, and a great deal of mythology emerged as a result of those occupations. People believed that somehow or another we had rescued the poor benighted Germans and Japanese from ignorance and squalor and stupidity and fascism. In reality, all we did in both countries was get these countries back on the track that historically they had followed before the war. So you still had a Japanese emperor, you now had a parliament, and all of these institutions in Japan worked. The same institutions in Germany sprung up and they worked. And the people themselves, culturally, were already predisposed to follow the same line that we're discussing right now. It wasn't exactly the way we govern ourselves. It was different, but it was quite similar. We thought, well, this model, what we've done in Germany and Japan, we could do the same thing in Afghanistan. We could do the same thing in Iraq. We could do the same thing in Syria. And we forgot that the secret of success in both Germany and Japan was our fervent admiration and respect for the cultures and the histories of the people that we occupied. We actually respected the Germans and the Japanese. We didn't impose anything on them. We helped them get back on their feet. They did the work. That's why we remained friends. We at least understood that when the war ended, we wanted to be on good terms with people. We've thrown all of that out. We simply say we have the answer, and everyone in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya has to become like us, which is absurd. Makes no sense at all.